Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sami Parvez show. Today, I'm joined by David Krayden, who is the columnist for the Post Millennial. We will be discussing about latest liberal government immigration policies, the foreign interference in the next general election, and the French President Emmanuel Macron visit to Canada. Thank you so much, David, to joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It's always a pleasure and honor for me to have you here.
Well, nice to be here, Sammy.
Okay, David, let's begin the changes in the immigration system. Like just Canada is reducing the numbers of international students, temporary foreign workers, and also now it is coming to permanent residents. So how do you see, how come Trudeau government decided now it's time to reduce the number, as in the past we saw, like whenever you talk about reducing the number of permanent resident, it was described as a racist.
Yeah, it certainly is a sea change. I think the reason is probably quite obvious because they see a vast number of Canadians are now becoming opposed to immigration in a way they never have been before. And I don't think it's because Canadians are racist or because they don't want immigration. It's because mass immigration has not worked and it is dangerous to the fabric of the country. And that's what Canadians are upset about. The Liberals have deliberately allowed too many people in without adequate housing, without adequate employment. And Canadians look at this and saying this is a double-edged problem. Not only are there just too many immigrants at far too immediate a time, but once they get here, what happens to them? They tend to become ghettoized and in some cases radicalized because we don't have the resources to deal with so many people. And there's too many illegal immigrants getting into Canada. There are too many people being settled in Toronto and Montreal and Calgary. We need to, immigrants need to settle in other parts of the country, not just in enclaves. And
Mhm.
that's the Liberal government has not done anything about that. One thing I am enthused about is the Conservative response to this has been to say that don't blame the temporary foreign workers who are working on farms
Yeah.
because they're there because the farmers can't find Canadians to do those jobs. Pierre Poilievre finally gets this. And a lot of conservatives never got this. They just said, stop the temporary foreign worker program because why can't we get Canadians to do the job? And the point is, for most of the agricultural sector, Canadians don't want to do the job
Mhm.
because they say, get my hands dirty, pick pick potatoes or dig for potatoes, pick apples. No, I don't do that.
Mhm.
So the farmers have been forced to resort to this over the years, and Poilievre gets this now because a lot of conservatives never understood why farmers in the agricultural sector have to import temporary foreign workers. So I think this is a positive thing. I hope Poilievre follows through on ending mass immigration. That we need to stop and consider what we can function with as a country. And people coming to Canada have to do so legally, and they have to do so with the desire to become Canadian. And that has always been an issue. But I think the Liberals are running scared on immigration because Mark Miller has been an abject failure. And he put an immigration cap, for instance, that doesn't come into effect until after the next election. And this to me was a dead giveaway that they're not serious about this. So they're talking about, yeah, okay, keep the students out. That's not really very controversial because
Yeah.
most people say, well, what the hell? That's fine because I'm not a student and we have too many foreign students.
Yeah.
But it's not really making systemic changes to immigration because the liberals are reluctant to do it. They want to seem to be tackling the problem, as the liberals always love to be seen as doing something, but they're not really. I mean, if you look at how the liberals are advertising their progress in Canada and their record in Canada,
Mhm.
it's for very vague programs and policies that really don't touch a lot of people, like dental care, for instance. Most people are not going to be affected by the dental care program, and those who are really can't use it.
Hmm. Yeah, and but despite they put a cape, I don't know like when they will put a cape, but still we are seeing the numbers, like in July numbers is shown that record number of people despite entering in Canada, like despite these all capes, it seems like everything is happening, and it seems like nothing is happening with respect to whatever they are putting. It means people are still coming with respect to international students, illegal immigrants, and permanent residents. So, do you think anything will stop them?
Stop the well, I don't see anything that's going to stop the current Liberal government except an election,
Mm-hmm.
which I do think is imminent. I've been saying November ever since Jagmeet Singh made his big announcement about ripping up the agreement. I believe we could have a November election because now the bloc is demanding impossible, uh, um, shall we say, concessions from the
Mm-hmm.
government, which they're not going to get. And I think Jugmeat looks incredibly foolish every time he says, "Yeah, the agreement's ripped up, but I'm still going to prop up Justin Trudeau." So I don't think that we're going to see any real change from this government until we have another election, and that is going to bring some real change. I hope it's going to bring some change to the immigration policy from Polyev, but he's very vague about that whole matter, and so we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And but do you think we will have an election before Christmas?
Yeah, I do. I'm still saying we're going to have a mid to late November election. That's my gut feeling. I could be totally wrong. I've been following politics for 30 years or so, but I really do think it's crumbling. I'm watching the reactions from Trudeau and saying it seems to be unhinged right now. I mean, very bizarre behavior from a leader of a political party to be threatening people, to be saying he wants to have a fight with the official opposition leader, to to be confronting protesters in a
Yeah.
physical manner.
Mm-hmm.
This to me represents like an anger management problem.
Yes.
And Trudeau is increasingly strange. His behavior is very bizarre. He going on, the Stephen Colbert show just so he could feel good because that's an audience that loves him. They think Justin Trudeau is just so cool. And they say, "Wow, I wish we could have a leader like Justin Trudeau in the States." These are the most sycophantic acolytes of Justin Trudeau, the people who watch that show and sit in the audience. So he had an hour just to feel the bask in the glow
Mm-hmm.
of the admiration he has not got in Canada anymore, even
Mm-hmm.
from his own Liberal caucus. It was a difficult caucus retreat. He heard nothing but bad reports from Liberal backbench MPs. The cabinet ministers were awkward. You could see that they were reading from a script that they didn't really believe in anymore. So I think we're poised for an next election. I feel it in the air. If it doesn't happen by November, it'll be a spring election. But I can't see us staying this way
Mm-hmm.
until next October. I just can't see it, despite the denials from a lot of people in positions of power that we can hold on. I don't think we can.
Mm-hmm. And don't you think like now Jagmeet is not concerned about his pension at all?
Well, Jugman is concerned about staying as leader of the new Democratic Party. That is his primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he ripped up the agreement. He could read the writing on the wall. I've been saying it for the last year. The longer the NDP stays in this loose coalition
Mm-hmm.
with the Liberals, the worse off it is for the NDP and Jagmeet Singh because their numbers go down with the Liberals
Mm-hmm.
and they're seen as nothing but an adjunct of the Liberal Party.
Mm-hmm.
And Jagmeet Singh, where is that? Because he's the guy, he's the author and the finisher of this agreement. He's the one that put all of his eggs in Trudeau's basket. And so he had to do something to differentiate himself from the Trudeau government. When you're 20 points behind, when Trudeau's 20 points behind Poilievre, he's got to do something to say, I'm not really part of the government. I'm still an opposition leader. And, for the last 2 years, he has not looked like an opposition leader. He's looked like somebody who is running a coalition government with Trudeau, even though he has no real benefit except the occasional policy concession. He doesn't have a cabinet minister in the Liberal government. So he really hasn't got very much from this coalition. So I think he's saying, I'm going to end up wearing this. I might not even get reelected. And if he didn't win that seat in Winnipeg, I think it would have been disastrous for him as the leader of the NDP, and there would have been, the knives would have been out because he has been a completely ineffective leader of the NDP. And in the aftermath of this, I'm ripping the agreement up announcement, he has looked extremely weak, vacillating, crazy at times with his behavior outside of the House and inside of the House, and somebody who really isn't in control of his caucus. So I don't think this is going to help. I think the only thing that's going to help Jagmeet Singh now to retain his leadership is an election, because it's not going to get better for him in the spring and fall. It's going to get worse.
Yeah, so I was hearing like Warren Kinsella and Brian Lilly were also talking, but Warren was saying that it is all about now they are keep pushing there. It means Trudeau cabinet minister MPs are just silent on Trudeau because they need their pension. Do you think will there be any revolt within Liberal caucus?
I don't know what reward they can expect at this point. This is 9 years of a government. Generally, governments don't last beyond 9 years, and they are removed. Sometimes the leader survives and comes back again, as Justin Trudeau's father did. Came back after that minority government from Joe Clark, which was a bit of a setback, and came back with a majority government for 4 more years. I don't believe that could ever happen to Justin Trudeau. But what kind of reward can Liberal MPs expect? Because a lot of them are going to lose their seats. There's no question about that. If the numbers hold up right now, and Pierre Poilievre gets the largest majority in Canadian history, because I've looked at this, and it's funny. This is something numbers always stick in my head over the years, because I remember it was John Diefenbaker held the record in 1958 for the largest majority. Brian Mulroney in 1984 surpassed that, and I think Poilievre, if he stays an average of 20 points ahead of the Liberal Party, he's on track to surpass that as the largest majority in history. Now that's going to mean the complete obliteration of the Liberal Party, and it will be back down to maybe even third party status as it was for a while during the Stephen Harper years. When Justin Trudeau, if you recall, when he became leader of the Liberal Party, he was not leader of the official opposition. He was leader of the third party. The NDP was the official opposition at that time, and I was working in the House during that time. And although the Liberals worshipped Justin Trudeau, the ground he walked on, saying, here is the savior for the future, he was not anybody except the leader of the Liberal Party, and really he didn't have the official opposition status. So the Liberals are headed for a terrible election result, perhaps the worst in their history. And every time that happens, of course, we start to talk about, is it the end of the Liberal Party? Are we going to become a more of a two-party system again with the far right and the right of center conservatives facing off? I don't know. I'm reluctant to write off the Liberal Party because they're so good at evolving and changing and saying what is necessary for political survival. They've done it so many times in the past. I don't know. And Stephen Harper's one of his goals, and I know this because I heard him say it behind the scenes, and sometimes he alluded to it publicly, but he talked about it quite a bit privately. He wanted the Liberal Party to disappear. He wanted a two-party system in Canada. He thought that was the best thing for Canada, to have a two-party system, a clear choice between left and right. And he was actively hoping for the destruction of the Liberal Party. Didn't happen, and they've been in power for 9 years. So I don't know. I never write them off. I do write Trudeau off. I don't think he has the political sense to rebound from this. or the humility. And that's really what it comes down to for me. This is such an ego-driven, narcissistic individual who will never take responsibility for the ills of his government or his party. That people are just so fed up with it. You can take so much of people like narcissistic people, and if they're Hollywood celebrities, you almost understand it and you can tolerate it. But when they're politicians and they rely on the kindness of voters to survive, it is intolerable to watch Justin Trudeau continually talk about himself and about how he has to go through so much turmoil on behalf of Canada and Canadians. He has suffered so much on our behalf. Can't we just understand how wonderful and great he is? I think it's over for Justin Trudeau. He cannot make a political comeback. It's not in his physical being or his psyche or his intellect to do so.
Mhm. And is it then it will be the political career will be over for Justin Trudeau after losing the next election, right?
No, he's going to the United Nations. And I am starting this rumor
Mhm,
because I don't doubt for a minute. Antonio Guterres, the current Secretary General of the United Nations, is getting very old. He's near retirement.
mhm,
He's near ending his tenure. Justin Trudeau is a globalist. He would probably love nothing more than to work for the World Economic Forum. But the
mhm,
United Nations is always a tantalizing choice for these people. I mean, the good grief, they hired Climate Barbie from the former environment minister to work for the United Nations. So they would love to have Trudeau. And of course, Trudeau was there this week
mhm,
doing a speech before the General Assembly about the summit of tomorrow.
mhm,
What do you like? And a virtually empty house, but that's not who decides who the Secretary General is going to be on
mhm,
any given day. So I think he's campaigning for that job. I really do. And this is why he's spending a lot of time with people like Emmanuel Macron this week and Zelensky. He
mhm,
loves to be seen as this international guy who's comfortable on the world stage. And as a lot of political leaders find out towards the end of their political tenure, they're more popular around the world than they are in their own country. This has been true for so many leaders. And Pierre Trudeau is the same way. His father, as far as we know, his father was the same way. Towards the end of his years as prime minister, of course, he was in the basement for popularity. People had had enough of Pierre Trudeau, but he could always make an appearance internationally, and he was seen as this great global leader, and he had his fans. And Trudeau's the same way. Justin Trudeau's the same way. He can always go to New York City and find an appreciative audience. He can always go to Paris or London and find admirers. And that's where he's most comfortable. He's
mhm,
not comfortable dealing with the person from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
mhm,
He's not comfortable dealing with the guy from Revelstoke, BC. Ordinary Canadians who have real problems, and that he doesn't want to really deal with. He's not on their level, never will be, never has been.
mhm. And yeah, and what was the purpose of Emmanuel Macron visiting to Canada?
Well, I think this is again Trudeau's attempt to look like he's a global leader, and he knows very well that that's going to trigger people, the anti-globalist people who just can't stand Trudeau. They can't stand the sight of him. But that doesn't bother Trudeau because he thinks these people are lunatic fringe. These people are not even to be considered as serious. So, but this gives him an opportunity to look like he's in control. I found that whole thing comical. It was almost very strange at times the way they continually embraced each other. And no, I'm not going to go there in terms of what that means for
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau. But I really marveled at the scene in his office when he has Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly by his side, and he does everything possible to get her out of the camera view, and he's motioning her, sit over here, get out of here.
Mhm.
get get out of here because this is man talk, and it reminded me literally of a scene from a James Bond film, Goldfinger, where Sean Connery as James Bond says to this female masseuse, okay, baby, time to get out of here. And he literally slaps her on the bum and says, man talk. And that's what that scene reminded me of is Trudeau, who pretends to be this great uber feminist, who just is so respective of women and women's rights. He is in reality just an absolute uh, hypocrite on this issue. And we know from listening to liberal MPs, female liberal MPs, that he is a monster in private. He does not respect them as women. He does not respect their views or opinions. He uses them as window dressing. And when it comes to serious talk, get out of the room, Melanie, because I'm talking to my good buddy, Emmanuel, right now.
Mm.
And this is not something you can deal with. So, Drew can't help looking like a hypocrite because he is. He's a consummate hypocrite. Everything about him reeks of hypocrisy. Just as he is unalloyed narcissistic man, he is a completely overt uh, hypocrite in everything he does. And it's after a while, it's nauseating to watch him operate.
Mhm. And how do you see the foreign inquiry? Like recently, we learned that it took 6 weeks for public ministry to issue a warrant. It seems like they are not serious about this foreign interference.
Oh, they're not serious at all about the foreign interference. And yeah, I bring this issue up quite a bit on my show. And people are always saying, please talk about the foreign interference. And yet, what I do, there's limited interest. I don't know if that's YouTube suppressing it or not, but it's very frustrating because my question at the beginning of this parliamentary session was, who are the 12? And there was actually a group of people, and the woman leading it came up to me during the Freedom Convoy trial, and she said, we're going to be standing outside the House of Commons when they return on September 12th, I guess it was, Monday, September 12th, demanding an answer to who are these potential spies, these people who are under the influence of foreign actors, largely China. We know that. It's certainly not, I think Russia has been mentioned, Pakistan's been mentioned. Yeah, right. We know it's China
Mhm.
is behind all this. And not a peep all week about it in question period. Not anything from the government, of course. I didn't expect them to bring it up. But it disappoints me that there's been nothing from the official opposition about this. It was actually Elizabeth May, of all things, of all people, brought this up this week and said, who, and she was the one who said, I read the report and I didn't see any problem here.
Mhm.
But now she's saying, why isn't Pierre Poilievre asking more about it? Is he involved? So I'm thinking, typical of Elizabeth May, who's all over the map at times, and a leader of two people. But I can't understand why the conservatives, especially with people that they've got in their caucus who are really up on this issue. I'm thinking of Edmonton MP Michael Cooper, who I've had on my show a number of times, and I generally will talk to about China because he's quite accessible, unlike a lot of conservative MPs who won't talk to the media, especially conservative, small C conservative media,
Yeah.
because they've been told not to.
Mhm.
But Michael Cooper has been very, very good to talk to over the last couple of years on this issue. So there's a lot of people in that caucus who really are attuned to the Chinese influence. Or as the conservatives like to say, Beijing. They don't want to say China. They say Beijing, although it drives me crazy. But so why isn't Poilievre asking, who are the 12?
Yep.
And I blame Poilievre as much as I blame Trudeau on this because he doesn't want to talk about it. I don't know. Is there a conservative on the list? I have no idea. If I was a foreign actor and if I was from China, and these people from China are very astute, they know how Canadian politics works. They know if you're in opposition, there's very little you can do to reward a foreign government. All you can do is lobby the minister, and
Mhm.
and there's not. But I mean, if I was a foreign influencer, if I was a foreign spy, I would be going after the Liberal cabinet ministers. That's who I would be targeting because they're the ones who can deliver the goods for me.
Mhm.
They're the ones I'd want to compromise. And of course, historically, if you look at the Cold War spying that went on with the Soviet bloc people trying to get into NATO countries, they went after prime ministers. They went after cabinet ministers, not some backbench MP in the other party. So who are these people? Why isn't Polyev desperate to know who these guys are? If is it the prime minister? Is he one of them? He's the one that pretended he knew nothing about this and until suddenly it became a crisis, and he knew everything about it. Been dealing with it for years. I was ahead of everybody on this issue. So I don't know who these 12 are any more than you do or anyone in the National Press Corps that I'm aware of, unless they've seen the unredacted document. I've not met any journalist who has.
Mhm,
So I don't know who they are, but I don't know why Polyev and the conservatives aren't pushing it harder. I think they should be.
mhm,
And I always tell people it Polyev does screws up the same way Trudeau does. I'll be on his case just as much as Trudeau. He needs to do more about this file. There's no question about it.
mhm. But is he going to do something like will we ever know about these 12 people? These are 12 or 11?
Yeah, there's 12.
12.
I don't believe it will. And my once again, I don't. What am I basing that on? The fact that there has been no movement on this. Because I said when Parliament went away for had their summer recess.
Yeah, I heard at that time you said this last week there were no discussion about this one. I don't know if
Yeah, I said if they don't do something about this in the last week, if they
yeah.
don't at least say we are going to come back and get answers, we're not going to get answers.
Mhm,
They all want this to die, including the NDP. I mean, the NDP is not ragging about this either. Why? I I don't know the answer why. I wish I did, but I don't think we're going to get any answers. I think this is going to go in the dustbin of Canadian political history, and we're never going to find out those answers. Maybe not now. Eventually, we probably will,
mhm,
but we're not going to find out now. I don't think before the next election anyway.
mhm. And if there will be this inquiry will be over of justice under justice. Oh, so will there be any changes in terms of the next election to protect it from any foreign interference?
Mm. Well, that would certainly the conservatives have laid out some concrete plans to do that, and I'm thinking Michael Cooper. I've talked to him about this. They have actually said we need to outline some rules about engagement with these foreign actors so this can't happen again. I'm totally uncertain about this because there's no real consensus and amongst all the political parties to do anything. And I think if they can agree on anything in the House of Commons, and there's very little they can ever agree on, I would think this would be one thing they could agree on and actually legitimately agree on. It's easy to all stand up and say, we all believe in healthcare in this country. As bad as our healthcare system is, I could go on about that for an hour, but you would think all of the political parties would be resolved that we cannot allow foreign actors, namely China, to affect our elections in the future, and we can't allow them to compromise members of parliament or senators. We must put rules in place, regulations in place so that this doesn't happen. And there's no desire to do that, or it
Mhm.
would have been mentioned this week.
Okay, and what's your final take? So how Parliament will get dissolved? Will Justin Trudeau himself ask the Governor General to dissolve the Parliament, or bloc Labour, bloc NDP and Conservative will come together and push forward a no confidence motion in Liberal government?
I think the first crumble will be with the bloc not getting its old age pension wish, which I understand would be about $2 billion to the current deficit. Now you can say, well, what's that to a government that doesn't care about deficits? Well, it's just the optics are so bad, and the not just of spending $2 billion tomorrow, but of looking like they are lackeys of the bloc. They'll do anything the bloc will say, and I think there's enough, not just in Trudeau, but there's enough people in cabinet and in the caucus who say we can't do this. We just can't be seen as doing the bidding of a separatist party. I've said quite often, I don't think the bloc has any business sitting in the House of Commons. I think the elections actually be amended so that you have to be serving Canada in the House of Commons, not a particular province. I have no time for the bloc. I think that party is traitorous, is treasonous. I have no interest in that party. And I think there's enough liberals to say we can't really be seen as being in bed with the bloc. Now, once that crumbles, I think the NDP will say, are we going to be propping up the government after Jagmeet Singh got up and said, we've ripped up the agreement? And he said several times, it means an election is going to come sooner rather than later. How many times did he say that? In the aftermath of saying, I've ripped the agreement up, reporters kept saying, does this mean there's going to be an election soon? Yes, it does. It means an election will be sooner rather than later. Yes, it definitely means an election is coming. He must have said that a dozen times. So can he remain as leader of the NDP and continue to prop up the Liberal government by himself? I don't believe so. I think it's going to become overwhelming. The weight will become overwhelming to Jagmeet Singh, and he will say, I've got to break ranks and I've got to vote with Poilievre. He won't say I'm voting with Poilievre. He's going to bring back the other talking points. He's got two sets of talking points. He's got the I hate Justin Trudeau talking points. Justin Trudeau is out of touch. Justin Trudeau is in bed with the corporate elite. Justin Trudeau doesn't understand ordinary Canadians. And when that's not essential to his day, he reaches for the other talking points that say, I don't listen to Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre wants to destroy Medicare. Pierre Poilievre wants to destroy dental care. Now, Pierre Poilievre is an existential threat to Canada. He will go back to talking point A and start saying Justin Trudeau is just out of touch. We can no longer support him anymore, and it's time for an election. And will that happen in time before Christmas? Yes, there's lots of time. It could happen by the end of this week, actually. And the Bloc could say, well before their deadline of October 29th, this is not working. The government's not giving us any indication that they plan to move. The government's not showing any sort of relaxation. So we're saying right now, next non-confidence vote, we're going to vote against the government. That could happen sooner rather than later as well. So I think we're going to have a traditional kind of government defeated. Justin Trudeau goes to the Governor General, calls on another election, and that could well happen in late fall.
Okay, thank you once again, David, for giving your time and appearing on the Sami Parvez show. It's always an honor for me to have you here.
Well, thank you, Sami, and best of luck to your show. I support it in any way I can. We need more journalists like you on the air who are not afraid to talk about truth and about any subject not afraid to step on toes. And that's what your show is all about. And I'm always happy and proud to be a part of it. So thank you again.
Thank you. My pleasure, and thank you so much for your appreciation and the feedback you brought. And once again, sir, thank you, and thank you so much the work you are doing.
Thank you.
My pleasure.